Hi, I'm Dave Stanke, and I'm a developer advocate with Google Cloud Platform. I'd like to talk to you today about Squish level objectives. We're going to start with some engineering myths. These are things we tell ourselves that just aren't true. Here's the first. I'm not customer facing. Just because you don't speak to customers doesn't mean you don't have direct impact on them. Your work matters to someone. If you don't know who that is, well, you owe yourself to find out. Who will be happy when you do good work? And who's going to be let down when you make mistakes? There may be many layers between you and that person. Traverse those layers and meet them. The more you know about what that customer values, the better a job you can do. Learn what they care about so you can do a good job and get promoted. Now, if you have a customer, you have a product. What's a product? A product is some reasonably coherent unit of value that's delivered to your customer. It's a thing that they can choose instead of another thing. Now, the thing that you give them might not look at all like other things that they might choose. Let's say you work on a platform that's a backend dependency of lots of things, the only option available at your company. Well, there's still choices. Whoever is funding your work could choose to outsource the whole thing. So there's always a choice, and that means there's always a customer. Now, a product doesn't have to be something that sits in a shelf on a supermarket. In fact, it never is. That tube of toothpaste in the supermarket, that's not really the product. The product really is in the eye of the beholder. It's the experience that the customer has, the benefit that your customer receives, and that they're able to recognize, well, that's the product. That's what they pay for. And this is true even of those packaged products at the supermarket. Colgate isn't trying to sell you one tube of toothpaste and move on. They're trying to create a brand affinity, a relationship, and repeat purchases. They're trying to help you believe in the Colgate lifestyle. Now, a great product that nobody uses isn't great. And if you think your product is great, but nobody understands how great it is, you're wrong. Before I discuss the final myth, I want to present an SRE principle. Now, folks listening today probably know the basics of SRE, but I'm going to reintroduce some SRE principles so we can put them in a customer context. So SRE principle number 1, reliability is the most important feature of any service or product. Is reliability a feature? Yes, we believe it is. It's a benefit to the customer that needs to be prioritized alongside functionality. And this brings us to myth number 3. I hear this a lot from engineers. I don't work on features. Well, does your work affect reliability? That's a feature. What about performance? Performance is something that customers can perceive and something that takes work. So it's a feature too. Or maybe you're working on reducing operation costs. That's likely to affect the price for the customer. That's a feature. The sum total of your customer's experience with your product and all the features over the lifetime of their relationship with you adds up to their perceived value. We want to maximize the user's perceived value over time. Now, for the developers and the SREs listening, I want to make sure you hear this. This isn't somebody else's problem. If your customer doesn't appreciate your product, you're in trouble. Your job's at risk. For everyone who works on a product, the first priority, the only priority, is to make things better for the customer. And about that, I've got bad news. Your customer hates your code. Because here's the thing, your customer doesn't know a thing about your code and they don't want to. The only time your customer experiences your code is when it throws an error and they see some stack trace with a bunch of techno garbage in it. As an engineer, the thing that you get paid to create is not code, it's not infrastructure, it's a product delivered to customers. Now here's SRE principle number 2. We don't determine the reliability of our systems, our users do. And this is why our alerting systems respond to degradations in user experience, not the computer's feelings. We don't want to get paged in the middle of the night for a CPU spike, but we do want to get woken up if the service is actually unusable. I'm going to generalize this principle a little bit. We don't determine the quality of our product, our customers do. And customers are humans. They're fickle, they're emotional, they're squishy. And they're going to perceive the product we give them in a way that's highly subjective. But it's what's real to them, and that's what we need to aspire to. which makes us ask, what do these people want? How can we find out what's going to make them happy? Well, we could start by asking them. Now, there's an art to this, but to be clear, yes, I am suggesting that engineers should talk directly to customers. In fact, more importantly, they should listen to customers. DevOps and SRE have taught us that it's an anti-pattern for devs to throw the code over the wall to the ops team. This creates misaligned incentives and resentment and poor velocity and ultimately unhappy customers. We shouldn't do the same thing with our specs and have product throw a spec over the wall to dev. This is an anti-pattern where I've seen this happen where some person talks to the customers and then they deliver something to some architect who writes up some elaborate spec and they just drop it on the engineering manager's desk, it goes thump, and they walk away. What happens is that it's really hard in that way to communicate genuine priorities and objectives, and the eng team may implement to the letter, but not the spirit of that product. This leads to projects that get finished, but never used, and teams that don't get appreciated and rewarded because their work didn't benefit anyone. And that leads to even more resentment. But here's the thing about engineers. Engineers like to solve problems. If you don't give them problems to solve, they'll invent problems to solve. Now, what's the hardest problem in computer science? People, customers. So help engineers to understand customer problems. We want to use that engineer's energy and intelligence to solve problems that matter. That means they need to understand customer problems because those are the ones that matter. Okay, how? First off, talk to users. Now that we have a lot of tools in this toolkit that can help with that, like UXR, user experience research, to go out and there are tools about observing people using the product. This can be done formally or informally. It's really great to set up a cafe study and just ask people to take a look at your prototype and give you feedback. It's also okay to just listen. You can have engineers behind the one-way mirror if they don't feel like they want to engage directly, but they do want to listen. Remember, these are humans and you can't change their humanity. You can't rationalize it away. We need to internalize it and satisfy it. And listen to more than one customer. It's great to have one customer in your mind, but it can lead to overfitting. We really want to have more sample size than that. Here's another way to understand our customer is to be them, put ourselves in their shoes. Dogfooding is great. If you use the thing and it doesn't work, you're going to know it. But dogfooding isn't everything. It's likely that you have different goals and different contexts than your customers. So going another step, empathy sessions is even further than dogfooding, where we ask people, we do this at Google, we ask engineers to solve a problem as their customer, to do the work of the customer using their product and really understand what's going on. And we can often find a lot of really rough edges that can easily be sanded off when we put ourselves in their shoes. Another thing we can do is we can try the competition. Check with your legal department, but if that's okay, go ahead and see what the customer is used to. And this is a great way to learn about implicit standards. If there are 3 products that dominate the market and you're trying to introduce a 4th, look for the ways that all those 3 do something the same way. If you plan to do it differently, well, you better have a very good reason and be able to convince your user that there's a reason for that. Otherwise, it's just going to be friction for adoption. Finally, a way to understand our customer is to mess with them. SRE provides for error budgets, and it strongly encourages us to spend them. So we can use these to question our assumptions about the user. What if we doubled the latency? Would anyone actually care? Let's find out. No matter what our job title is, our work is always in service of the customer. We want them to choose our product instead of something else. Okay, but what about all those things the customer doesn't care about? Like, let's say security. They don't care about security. It's invisible to them. Well, we hope it is, because if the customer's PII gets leaked, the customers will care about security. It's no longer invisible. So we need to factor in the potential damage to customers when we're prioritizing. Is that easy? No, but security is a product feature. How about tech debt? Well, paying down tech debt customers shouldn't really care about. I already told them they hate your code. They don't care if your code is bad or good. They hate it regardless. But here's the thing. The customer will care eventually. We don't ship once and forget the customer. We retain that relationship over time. And so paying down tech debt should give us the benefits of shipping faster and shipping better over the long term. If the benefits from paying it down won't ever be reflected on the customer, then it's actually not a good use of your time. How about this one? your happiness. Your customer is not your family. They don't care about you as a person. But happy engineers are productive engineers, and they stay in their jobs longer, and they build domain knowledge, and that's good for the customer. So in order to be sure our work is actually leading to some benefit for the customer, it helps to keep them around the whole time we're developing. Not literally, or at least 6 feet at least. But in between all those times that we are engaging directly with them, we need ways to maintain a mental model that represents their goals and their motivations. So here's a few of the tools that can be used. User personas are a tool used in user experience research to describe what a person's position in the world is, what their ambitions are, and how they're likely to approach your product. And that user persona is likely different from the people on the engineering team. JTBD is a great framework called Jobs to be Done, and this models user intention in a way that can be used to develop out your product. And prototyping is really fantastic as a way of putting things directly in front of customers very early. We've even used something like these trading cards. This was came out of a project that I was part of, where we built these trading cards for our key personas, and we kept them right at our desks to remind ourselves, okay. And when we're building something, we would pull out the card and say, this person cares about this product and this feature. Okay, well, this person's not going to like it. Let's debate that. Having that representation, having them in the room with you, those customers, really helps to make sure that we're staying on track and on target for them. Now, when we're implementing, we can also keep them involved. One great way to do this is with customer-oriented milestones. A great way to phrase engineering milestones is something like, as of milestone M4, the customer will be able to do such and such. And once we've achieved it, doesn't matter how much code we wrote or didn't. If we've achieved that thing, we're allowed to cross off that milestone. We can also have customer feedbacks early and often, things like a trusted tester group or customer advisory board. People love to feel like an insider, and bringing them in lets us have that early feedback and consistent feedback. Finally, service level objectives, these should have a rationale, right? Why did we pick this particular goal for our SLO? And initially, we're going to choose that based just on what we've achieved in the past. But as we iterate, it's important to calibrate this against user expectations. And some of the ways we might justify our targets are something like a UX study showed that CSAT decreases when error rates rise above such and such. Maybe if you don't have the resource for that, we can also use research. We can cite literature. There's a lot of literature out there about users' experiences with technology and what kinds of responses, what kinds of task durations they're expecting. And we can use that to inform our SLOs. The best technology may not be the fastest. It may not be the newest. All things being equal, fast is usually better than slow, and new is usually better than old. But all things aren't equal. We don't build software for an abstract, rational, platonic ideal of the customer. We build for irrational, emotional, squishy humans. So the best technology is the one that produces the best outcomes for its customers. Here's the recipe for success to achieve that. First, define the product according to what your customer values. And research and empathy are the tools we can use to do that. Then consistently deliver according to that definition. For that, we have a great tool set in SRE. How to get started. Find your customer. Find them, whoever it is whose experience of your product matters to your success. Find that person and engage with them. Learn what they value and write it down. Make it so that you can bring it into your development process and have it ever present as you're working on the product that you're going to deliver to them. And then deliver it consistently, repeatedly, and repeat. Thanks for listening. I'm Dave Stanke. Look for me on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you.